Welcome back to Before the Fame podcast. This is your host, Jordan. And tonight we got a good episode for you guys. This is my 39th episode. And everything that I've put into these episodes have kind of sort of meshed together, right? We talked about our heartbreaks. We've talked about the fun times. We've talked about a little bit of everything, right? But tonight we're going to get into assignments versus alignment, right? And before we get into that, we got to thank the Lord for having us go through another great week. Even though it's been rainy outside, I know you guys probably don't like driving in the rain or being in the rain, period. But for me, that's just another chance for us to cleanse ourselves, cleanse the earth, of all the dirt, all the funk that's been going on around. And for me, I had an eventful weekend last weekend. It was my brother Chance's 30th birthday. I was able to celebrate with him. And then also this weekend, we are going out to see a movie premiere with my good friend from work. So that should be exciting. Also, this weekend is going to be Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. Hopefully you guys have had a good week. And yeah, man, let's get into this episode. Oh, also, before we get started, I just want to say that my day today, for those of you that don't know, this is the 14th year since my mother has passed. And I can say out of all the years that have gone by, this has been one of the most freeing years for me. I've been through a lot of ups and downs this year, but I finally realized my place in this world, right? And I know that's kind of weird to say, for some people my age, we are caught kind of in that middle ground of like finding ourselves and, still learning about ourselves at the same time. But for me, and as it pertains to this episode tonight, it was more so about aligning myself with the right people, right? Because I felt like I understood my assignment. I felt like the more that I learn myself, the more I'm comfortable with letting go of things that I would make my assignment, right? That I would assign to myself, if you will. So with that being said, we're going to get into it. And now this week we got into a few topics, right? We talked about Adam and Eve last week, right? And we stated how Adam's assignment given to him by God was to watch over the garden, right? And now where I feel like with all mankind, we kind of sort of were given that task, right? To protect the gardens or protect our homes, protect our women, protect our children, right? But where we kind of got lost in that was we thought that by getting money, we could do that, right? We thought that by paying for things, that was protection enough, right? And in some cases, we do need money to secure things, to, make sure that our insurance is up to date and all the stuff is needed for the household is secured and all of that stuff. I felt like we got away from the provision part of it, right? So when it comes to provision, right? Because that's a part of our assignments too, right? We're not just here to be a piggy bank or, just to be a cash cow for our families, but we're also here to provide provision, right? And this weekend, I got to spend the time with my friend Chance, like I said earlier, and I was able to be around his family, right? And now my friend Chance, I've been knowing this guy for almost 20 years now, right? It's crazy that we are here and still cool to this day. That's my brother for life. But Chance and I have really been knowing each other for over 20 years, right? Our families, at least, right? Because his mother and my mother went to the same school. All of my aunts went to the same school. So we knew each other before we knew each other, if that makes sense, right? So it was destined that me and Chance were in each other's lives, but me being able to spend time with his family, I got a chance to see what provision looked like, right? Because Chance had a time where he lived with his dad, and I was able to get an insight on how that was, right? Because I'm not as close to my dad, right? So his dad was kind of sort of like second dad, right? We spent a lot of quality time, made sure we went to church, all the things that friends do, had plenty of sleepovers, just did a lot of things together, right? So when it comes to provision, his dad taught me that you can provide all the nice things. You can provide a roof. You can provide a car. You can provide all of that, right? But if you're not actively in your child's life, if you're not actively providing that security, that sense of a safe space, right? Because you can have a home, but if it's not a safe space for your children, they're not going to come to you, right? They're not going to open up to you. They're not going to think of you as the person to come to for advice, right? And now there's been plenty of times where I didn't have my dad to go to, but I could go to Chance's dad for advice, right? And he wouldn't judge me, right? He wouldn't make that feeling of like, hey, you're not my son or anything like that, right? He would provide the insight that I needed, and he was going to joke about it too, right? He would give you a good laugh. So I thank him for that. Happy Father's Day to you, Mr. Shelton. But back to the point. We've gotten away from the idea of provision, right? And we focus so much on the financial parts of life that we forget that provision is also spiritual, right? Provision is given to you by God, right? So just like the financial aspects of things is God given as well, but when speaking on provision, we tend to leave out a lot of things that is God given, and we're going to get into that tonight, right? So now, I said earlier that we also talked this week about how our assignments, we sometimes assign ourselves things that's not really our assignments. So we're going to into some of that tonight. First things first, when it comes to assigning ourselves problems that aren't really ours, right? And I've been guilty of this myself. So I'm just speaking on my experience. Assigning ourselves the weight of healing others, right? And I've talked about this with my good friend from work. I call her twin, and she knows exactly who she is. But we can't assign ourselves that task, right? We're not in that position to heal others, right? We can lead people to healing. We can lead people to the right resources, all of that thing. But it's not our job to heal other people. It's not our job to give people all the answers, right? Even when we think we have all the answers, it's not our job, right? It's not our job to walk for people. It's not our job to do the work for others. And for me, again, I can only speak from my experience. I have done this countless times where I would try to help and I would overextend myself and I would leave myself drained because I'm thinking that I'm helping when I'm really not, right? I'm really enabling behavior that other people know that it's not cool, right? It's not cool to hurt other people purposefully, right? It's not cool to use people purposefully. But you have people out there that is all they know how to do. And they feel like because their time has been spent trying to get back to where they once were, they have to use people to do that. And that's unfortunate, but that's the world we live in. So when it comes to us giving ourselves that grace, because that's what it's going to take, right? We got to give ourselves grace and realize, hey, we can't save everyone. We can't heal everyone. That's not our assignment, right? And that's all it is, right? Just acknowledging that, hey, this is not my assignment. I'm going to leave that to the person who came to me with these problems, right? Because they have to seek the answers themselves. They have to seek wisdom, knowledge. They have to seek all of these things that they can empower themselves with, right? So now the next thing that I want to talk about is assigning ourselves the burden of relationship tasks, right? Now, I don't want this confused with shared responsibilities, right? Because we all know if you're living with your partners, everybody has to clean up, behind themselves. Everybody has to cook. Everybody has to do the basic necessities of life, right? And that comes with, if you're living with your partner, or if you're not living with your partner, all of that is still shared responsibilities, right? But what I'm talking about is things that, again, we put on ourselves, right? Where you may have a partner who is falling behind on their rent, right? And now, if you're not living with this partner, right? This is strictly for the people you're living separately, and you want to take on these responsibilities. You want to be the man that provides, or the woman that helps her man get back on his feet. Those types of things aren't our assignments, right? Or getting them back right on their credit, things of that nature. It's not our responsibility, right? Point blank period. It's not our responsibility. And now, while I've only been on the end of this once in my lifetime, it still taught me a lot that being that person is only going to cause more strain in the end, right? You may think that you're helping in the beginning, right? And it may be helpful, right? It may be just to get that person to the next step or the next position. But in the long run, you realize that, hey, I'm only doing this because I wanted to be the person that you thought that I would be, right? Or the person that is helpful, right? And once again, it may be helpful in that position or in that point in time, but for us to really get to that point of self-sufficiency, being on our own, right? We have to let people make these decisions for themselves, right? And this is why when I talk to people who have been in this position, right, I can't tell people what to do. I don't tell people, hey, go talk to this person or anything like that. I could suggest, but it's up to you to make that step, to take that step, and to follow through, right? Because in the end, it's your decision, it's your life. If you want to be the one that's always being depended on, or your credit is always getting ran, because this person isn't responsible, that's what you got to deal with, right? And now, once again, when we talk about this, I don't want this to be confused with shared responsibility, right? If y'all are on a lease together and you knew the terms of this lease, you knew what you were signing up for, basically, you got to deal with that, right? That's shared responsibility. But if this person is using your name, your credit, and you already told them that you're not comfortable with that, don't let yourself be in that position, right? Because that I had to talk with that same friend about it, that it's not a position you want to be in, right? Where you depending on this person to follow through, and it's your name that's being put on the line. It's your reputation, basically. So those types of things aren't our assignments. But now here's where we're going to take a little pivot, right? Because we could go on and on about things that aren't our assignments, but now let's get into the alignment part of it. Because for me, like I said, in these past 14 years without my mom, I've recognized my assignment, right? And I'm going to give you three things that, I mean, everybody, this is really a God-given assignment, right? But for me personally, these are three things that I sum up in this whole episode and what aligns me with God and my purpose, right? So the first thing is that I told you guys, you got to love God, right? You got to acknowledge God. You got to love mercy, love compassion, love all the things that God has done for you. Because if you're not loving it, if you're not putting your heart into it, your whole heart into it, then when you are in that position to help someone else, it's not going to be genuine, right? It's not going to be because you love it. It's just going to be because you're wanting something in return, right? And now, point in this is that, again, for me, I've done a lot of things that I'm not proud of, right? I had moments of selfishness. I've had my times of just not being the man that people looked up to me to be, right? But in all of that, I still loved mercy. I still shown mercy to people who didn't quite deserve it. And that's what loving mercy is about, right? You have to not only do it just because God says so, right? You have to do it because you love it, right? And that's, to me, like, another thing about loving God is that you have to love the God in you, right? You can't be the type of person that's putting yourself down and making sure that this person is always good, but you're not good, right? You have to love the God in you and respect the fact that you are made in his image. So that's the first thing. The second thing was loving others, right? That's part of the commandments, right? Loving others as we love ourselves. And I could go in on that, but you guys know what I mean when I say that, right? And that starts with you loving yourself, like I said, showing that same love for yourself, for your neighbor, showing that same love for a stranger, even your enemies, right? Jesus told us to love our enemies because they deserve love too. So I know that that's probably the toughest one for you guys, but for me, it's real simple, right? I don't wish bad on my enemies. I don't wish bad on anyone, right? I hope everyone is successful in what they're trying to do, and they are doing it with their whole heart, good intentions, and that's it. So that is number two. But now the third one is where I know I could use a lot of help on, right? I'm not really big on this one, but God told us to make disciples of all nations, right? And that, for me, is why when it comes to this podcast, I know I'm still a newbie. I still have a long ways to go, but I'm proud of the progress I've made in just under a year, right? That we are getting to the half a year mark, right? I think we are at half a year mark. Not so sure. But either way, we are getting to the half a year mark, and I've just enjoyed this process, right? I've enjoyed making sure that other people are seen and heard, right? I've taken in all of the feedback, and I'm just thankful for you guys and your support going forward. Like I said, we're going to end this one tonight because, hey, It's really that simple, right? Love God, love others, and make disciples. So this episode is concluded. Assignments versus alignment. And also, before we go, right? You can't have alignment until you understand your assignment. I'm going to end y'all with that one because for me, it took me a while to understand my assignment, right? It took me a while to understand that I can't save people. It took me a while to understand that I can't love people enough to love me back, right? They have to have it in their heart. And this stuff